Good afternoon, everybody. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Jake Brenner. I'm the Deputy Director for Policy and Public Affairs at the California Student Aid Commission. You might have heard from me a little bit earlier on our panel about data and the California financial aid landscape and opportunities for us to think about how our local practices, our state policies, or our local district policies can all collectively help us be able to reach more students and help them access the financial aid to which they're entitled, and we know can empower them to be successful once they get to a post-secondary institution. Our policy and public affairs team at CSAC, it includes not only the team that does government or media relations and works with policymakers or the traditional press, but in the spirit of bringing together a team that talks about financial aid with everyone who doesn't live in the weeds with us, whether you're a counselor or a financial aid administrator. Really, our most important audience in that vein are our students and families. And that's where our outreach and marketing team comes in, who are looking at how we can not only work through our Cash for College program or our California Student Opportunity and Access or CalSOAP program, but also how we can increasingly utilize other communications channels to reach students. This probably goes without saying, but our students today are finding information in ways that probably don't look the same as where we might have found information when we were thinking about applying for college. And many of us even are going to TikTok for dinner recipes and instructions. And our students are starting there when they're trying to think about how they can find information to understand what college means and financial aid. We've known that this is our reality for several years, but I'm really proud of our team at CSAC, and you're going to hear from two of our leaders at CSAC in this cause um, that we've been looking at how we can try to leverage these new communication platforms, but also what research and students are telling us about the most effective way to message about higher education and financial aid opportunities, how we can leverage these new tools and this new information to most effectively reach students and help them understand financial aid and navigate through the noise and the disinformation. I can remember a couple years ago being so frustrated when I saw that there was someone with a really prominent following on social media who was talking about the FAFSA and posting content that got a lot of traction and then saying, for $50, you can hire me for a coaching session to learn more about financial aid. I don't think any of us here think that that's how we should be asking students or families to approach a financial aid application. So when we're not in those spaces as college access and financial aid professionals, we know that students are still going to be going there and they're going to be finding less reliable, less trustworthy information, and sometimes pay to play information in these other spaces. So I'm really grateful for the work of my colleagues, Michael Lemus and Sarah Beth Brooks, who I'll introduce in just a moment, for helping bring the California Student Aid Commission into that space. The purpose of our session here today, and I'm going to pass it over to them to share a lot of wisdom with you, is to really help reflect on what we've learned in this process, the approaches that we've found to be successful, and how we've been able to, as I sometimes refer to it, ride the tiger of social media interest in light of the better FAFSA to not only get reliable information out, but also to grow our platforms, to grow our channels so that we will have greater reach in bringing that message forward to students, and then hopefully working with you all to amplify that message about the reliable free resources that are out there to help students apply for financial aid and understand how it can benefit them. So with that introduction out of the way, I am going to just very briefly introduce my colleagues. Michael Lemus is our outreach and marketing manager at the California Student Aid Commission. He has a background working on a university campus. And our colleague Sarah Beth Brooks is our outreach and marketing coordinator. And you've probably seen her on our Instagram or our TikToks where she's gone viral numerous times breaking down specifics within our financial aid jargon or our California financial aid programs and making that information accessible to students. So with that, I'm going to pass it over to Michael and Sarah Beth and let them take it away. Thank you all.
All right. Well, thank you, Jake, for the warm introduction. And you all get to see me once again. I know you all have seen me throughout the day, but we're here to talk to you about social media. And the intention behind our presentation and what Sarah Beth and I are going to chat with you about today is not just like any other presentation to just give you, here are the best practices. That's not our intention. Our intention is to let you know what it's taken, the work that it's taken for us to get to where we're at now, but also to give you some tangible next steps. And it is going to be, as Sarah Beth mentioned at the beginning of the presentation, there's going to be a couple of ways where we're going to also seek engagement from you all. But our goal is that you're able to leave this presentation feeling like you have some takeaways, knowing what tools you have access to, no matter where you're at when it comes to your understanding of social media. And so while, yes, we're going to be presenting best practices and things that have worked for us, again, our intention is to make sure that you also feel empowered through this process. So with that, I would like to ask a quick question, and you could put this in the chat. First and foremost, where are you joining from? And then the second question is going to be, what are the social media platforms that either you or maybe the space that you work for that you're representing today are currently on? So is that TikTok? Is it Facebook? Is it Instagram? Obviously, we're talking about social media here, so we want to get a good understanding of what that looks like. So feel free to start putting that in the chat, assuming you all have access to that. So let's just make sure. And there we go. Okay, we're starting to get some things rolling in. So Montclair, Fresno, Glendale. Instagram so far is the winner. So let's continue to see where we're at with that. So Instagram, Reddit. We've been talking about Reddit too, figuring out if we're going to get on there. So far Northern California. Thank you, Lisa, for joining us from far north. And as we continue to see those roll through, we're going to transition over to our next slide and continue with the presentation, but continue to put in what you are on as well as where you're joining us from. So here, what do you get with a social media strategy? Let's start off with this question. First and foremost, it's a way to exchange information, right? Whether it's to you or a peer, to your student, to your own family, your friends, whoever that may be, you're exchanging some form of information. And that could be through a comment, it could be through a post, it could be through a direct message. There's so many ways to communicate. And to Jake's earlier point, when it comes to students and our audience that we're trying to serve, we know that we need to go directly to them. And so that means that we need to be on all sorts of different platforms and also communicate in different ways because it isn't a cookie cutter approach. We also need to be clear and direct in our communication. And that is something that is allowed through social media for us to be able to gather information, make sure it's digestible, and then present it in a way that people are going to find engaging. The other piece, which I hope that for those of you that have been following our CA Student Aid account have been able to gather, is that we're building trust. We're going directly to these audiences, and that allows for the building of trust because people are able to see, okay, they're talking to me in a way that I talk to my friends or to folks around me. And I'm able to trust them because I don't just see them as this, no face type of brand or no face type of organization. They see real people behind the screen, which goes to the next point. We're building relationships, even though we may not be talking directly to these students through DMs. There are some that we do, of course, but not the far majority, but we're still able to build that trust and build relationships. I know I've firsthand gone to a number of different events where people are like, I know Sarah Beth, I saw her on this video. And that in a way is also a way to build that relationship where they're like, okay, Sarah Beth, CSAC, financial aid, the dots are being connected. And branding and creativity, for any of you that have been following CSAC over the years, we've come a long way. And I was here back in 2019, and we have come a long way from our branding in our social media. I remember way back when we just had basically Facebook. And to be honest, we didn't have a clear-cut plan as far as what we were posting back then or how we were going to manage social media. We were barely on any platforms, but it takes work. And that's something I do also want to mention right off the top is if you're even thinking, you know what, I want to start this, I want to think about what it looks like to have social media for our organization, and maybe it's already overwhelming, know that it just starts at the very beginning, right? And that's part of what we're going to be presenting today. We don't expect someone to become a viral sensation and have all this planned out. It's a matter of starting somewhere, and oftentimes that starts with a conversation or going to a presentation like this. And then last but not least, it's meeting your audience where they're at, which I discussed earlier. It's going directly to the platforms that they're on, being able to adapt your language and your verbiage, the jargon to make sure that they understand. And overall, just present yourself as someone that they can relate to. So that's something that we would definitely wanted to touch on right here. And with that, viral, I'm going to pass it to you, Sarah Beth, because I know you have quite a bit of experience with that.
That wasn't the plan. That is how I will start this conversation. When I went to Michael and Jake a couple of years ago and said we could find people, students particularly on social media, and pitched the idea that we should do that. The plan in my head was never to go viral, but we did. And so now people know who I am, which is awkward for me, but also has given me the opportunity to help a lot of people, right? That's another thing you get from having an effective social media strategy is being able to help people you wouldn't have wander into your financial aid office or people who don't know how to get you on the phone, right? And so I want to make sure that I define what going viral means at the beginning of this conversation. If you've ever worked in a middle school, you know what this means, right? It's when information spreads quickly and becomes widely known or referenced. When I think about the middle school example, I think about the middle school students I used to teach who would come in every day with a brand new joke, and I had no idea what they were talking about. But that information was widely known to the student population. And that's kind of what going viral on the internet is about. There's all different kinds of digital content that goes viral. This meme that's on the screen, believe it or not, is more than 10 years old. And every single person in this room has seen this meme. I've seen this meme, Michael's seen this meme, all of you have seen it. And it has a certain cultural reference or a certain cultural touchstone for us as people. In fact, the phrase, "this is fine," can exist separately from this meme, and we all still know that it's referencing this meme, right? So how does that happen? It happens through user engagement. When we're talking about a digital strategy, we're talking about things like likes, shares, comments, things like it being shared by larger organizations or larger accounts. When we're talking about a middle school classroom, it really just has to pass around the cafeteria, right? But when we're talking about the internet, it has to pass through a wider amount of space. So I'm going to pass it back to Michael, but I'll be back in a few minutes with some more ideas for you.
Thanks, Sarah Beth. And just so that you know, you're getting a lot of love in the chat in case you haven't already seen that. But thank you all, because we had a feeling that there would be a mixed audience here as far as folks that have followed us before, that have gotten a chance to see our content, and maybe some of you that have never interacted with our content. And that's okay too. We know that the folks that we're reaching, especially when we go viral, it's all sorts of people. And for some folks, it may be the very first time that they come across us here at CSAC. And so we'll also talk about those call to actions and how to make sure that you keep people engaged. So that's going to be part of our conversation as well. But with that, who are we trying to reach? So that's going to depend for each of you, right? Some of you are at school, some of you are at community-based organizations, some of you are working for CalSOAPs or regional coordinating organizations. Your audience, for the most part, considering that you're at the California College Affordability Summit, is probably going to be students and their families. However, if you're anything like CSAC, we have multiple audiences. That's the largest portion of our external audience, but we interface with a lot of different types of people because we're wanting to build and expand upon our partnerships. So let's talk about this constituency piece that you see on the screen. So I want to talk to you about a couple of different populations that we come across on a regular basis. This may look similar for you, but it also may look a little bit different depending on what region or part of the state that you're in or the different type of work that you do. First and foremost, our largest portion of our audience is definitely high school seniors. So this is their first time applying for financial aid. We're trying to reach them. And of course, high school seniors, and there are Gen Z. I know that we're nearing, I think Sarah Beth and I were talking about this last week, but Gen Alpha, if you haven't heard about Gen Alpha, yes, there's another generation that we're going to be talking about soon. But high school seniors currently with Gen Z, they speak in different terms, their terminology, their jargon, how they receive information. We've needed to adapt even over the last few months, but high school seniors are a huge portion of who we try to reach. Undocumented students. We're really trying hard. And I know you heard this if you were part of the presentation earlier, but we've seen a huge drop off when it comes to CADA numbers or California Dream Act application. And we know that we need to develop targeted campaigns for this student population. It's one, to make sure that they feel safe in submitting the application, but also that they feel empowered, right? And so that's why we consistently remember and remind people that when folks are talking about FAFSA, please also talk about the California Dream Act. And of course, parents of students, so now they're called FAFSA CADA contributors on these applications. Mixed status families, that's also very important. And if you're not familiar with that term, an example is, let's say, a student that is a US citizen and maybe their parents are undocumented. So there's mixed status in the household and how we communicate it with them. Because oftentimes these students are also having to translate information and communicate that back to their families. We also are trying to reach non-traditional students or adult learners, alternative education, returners, continuation. And I know a lot of folks, when they hear adult learners, they may think of a student that maybe is in their 30s or 40s returning back to campus. But as we think about what has happened through the pandemic years, we also have students that were not part of or right after high school, maybe took 2, 3 years away from school. Maybe they needed to work full time. So we also have part of these non-traditional students or adult learners that are actually in their early 20s. And so we also know that we cannot have a cookie cutter approach, right? Because even within this adult learner population, we need to dissect that and think about, well, how do we communicate with those early 20-year-olds, maybe versus someone that's working full time and trying to come back to school in their 40s. And then, of course, you all, there's a lot of you in the room right now, but other financial aid professionals, partners, organizations, people that can work with us to reach these students. But the big thing that I want to hone in on here as I close out on this slide is it's helpful for you all to also identify who is your constituency. If you haven't thought about that, it's a way of also doing some reverse engineering to think about, well, who do we serve? Because once you identify that, you can also start to think about, okay, well, with this population, we need to speak to them in this way or provide these types of materials. And we've been doing a lot of that these past few weeks in terms of what we're calling audience segmentation and really identifying each of these pockets of students and figuring out how do we best communicate with them. So with that, we're going to pass it on to the next slide, and I'm going to pass it back to Sarah Beth.
Yeah, a good example of what you were just talking about, Michael, is what Denise said in the chat, that they're trying to appeal to both undergraduate and graduate students. Those are two different pieces of your constituency, right? And there are going to be different approaches for each of them. Financial aid also works differently for each of them, right? And so diversifying your content is one of the things we're going to talk about in this section. We call this section, So What Actually Works? I know a lot of people think about what they could create on social media, and it's an overwhelming landscape. And they're not sure what's actually going to work, what's actually going to be a proven strategy for me. And so this entire section is built around questions you can ask yourself with some of the answers that we can offer you. And on this slide, you can see this video that I did walking through the 24-25 FAFSA. And it got like 648,000. This is just the Instagram views. Y'all had no intention of doing this, but it's amazing because I know that so many people saw these videos and were able to complete their FAFSA because of the information that we were making available. And there isn't some like special magical ability that I have that you don't also have. We're all financial aid professionals, and you can be sharing this information too. And it'll help to expand the ecosystem of people talking about this and providing this information. So we're going to start with a pretty basic thing. What can you share? What kind of content can you come up with? A lot of times people will sit with a blank page or a blank Word document and be like, I'm not even sure what I should talk about on social media or what kind of content I would put out. We have identified several different types of content that we talk about regularly, and that includes things like information or educational content. That's the bulk of what we talk about on our channels. How do you engage with the student population or the parent population? The parents are there too. We did not know that when we first started this, but many of you said you are on Instagram at the beginning of the webinar today, at the beginning of this presentation, right? Many of you said you're on Facebook. Many of you said you're on X already, right? Social media is not just for kids under the age of 25. And so remember, you're also talking to the parents. But you can provide them with information and educational material. You can provide them with information about your events. That's just like a basic event flyer. The way that we used to, or at least I used to, run flyers off on the copier machine in the copier room. Now you just run a flyer off onto a social media page and try to get the people you're working with to also post it on their social media pages, right? Celebration or showcases. We do this on our channel sometimes where we celebrate the wins of our staff, or for example, when Dr. Gonzalez became the executive director, we celebrated her, as well as Marlene Garcia's retirement. Those are also things that you can share. And then FAFSA completion and CADA completion stories. People who were successful in doing it, that's a great piece of content to share because it's an actual person having that success rate. Collaborations are also a great thing to share. So, for example, sometimes we collaborate with the California Community College Chancellor's Office, and you'll see in an Instagram post that both of our names are at the top of the post, and the post appears on both channels. That's a great way to build your network because you get a chance to expose your account to a different channel's audience. And so those are free ways. Like a collaboration doesn't cost you any money. You just have to go and make the connection and put that together. One of the big tips I want to leave you with from what you can share is to always leave your audience with something to do. You'll hear me say in our videos a lot, follow us, or go to our link in our bio and register for this thing, or here's the action you can take. You want to make sure to give them something that they can do at the end of the video. That's a really important part of giving them a complete experience. When you're talking about like marketing stuff, you want to make sure that not only are you informing them, but also giving them an action step to take. Yeah, a CTA, a call to action, like Michael said. And I also thank you, Annika, for saying that I am special and magical, and I am special and magical, but no more special and magical than any of you, right? I'm very happy to own my specialness and my magicalness, but you can also own your specialness and your magicalness too. I want to talk a little bit about what the platforms you can use. I am curious if you all recognize all 12 of these logos on the screen. Some of these are logos we've already talked about for platforms we've already talked about, and some of them are platforms we haven't talked about yet in today's presentation. So obviously Instagram gets a lot of love because it's our biggest platform. We have 57,000 people following us on Instagram. Across all of our platforms, we are over 100,000 people following us, and that was a lot of work over the past couple of years in order to put that together. But the persistence really pays off because over time, people begin to trust your channel, they share it with their friends, and you're able to grow your network. So some of the logos on this screen you might not recognize are the WhatsApp logo. That's this green logo with the phone in the middle of it. There are a huge number of immigrant communities that organize on WhatsApp. And that's a place where if you're serving immigrant populations, you could be spending time and energy doing WhatsApp question and answers, doing WhatsApp graphic distribution or flyer distribution. Your entire social media strategy could be, we have a WhatsApp number and we give it to everyone in our constituency, right? And then we post, that's where we post our content. You don't have to use Instagram or TikTok. That also saves you from doing the video if you're not interested in being on video, and not everyone is. Some of the others you see on here, Twitch, Snapchat, those are video channels. They are popular with younger folks. Twitch is video streaming, and Snapchat is very short form video. I think Snapchat's like 10 seconds or less. So talk fast if you're going to use Snapchat. But deciding which platforms you're going to use is a conversation about who your constituency is. Who are you trying to reach? That's why if you're trying to reach an immigrant population, you might go for WhatsApp. If you're trying to reach the students and their parents, you might go for Instagram, right? Like a broader set of students and parents that are not a specific community. And then the tools that you could use, these are all options of tools that you could use. These are the same tools that we used here in-house to manage this. Most of these tools are tools we don't pay for. And so I just want to make sure to underscore that. I know everybody's thinking about budgets, and we started out with a completely free set of tools. Now, over time, we've started to pay for some of them, but we don't pay for all of them. And that is also something that could help you. These tools are also something that could help you to be successful. They're the wheels on the road, right? So let's talk about them. The first is a short link generator. when you see our content or other people's content on the internet, oftentimes they're using an abbreviated URL, something that's really short and to the point. For a while, we were using castudentaid.org, and you'll see us start to shift back to csac.ca.gov/ very short back half of that URL. And that's because part of what we've learned in the research is that one of the reasons people trust us is because we are a government agency. And so you could use short links to help advertise your events, your sign-up forms, your FAFSA CADA nights, whatever that is. That's also a place where you can make QR codes that are trackable if you're going to also track your social media presence. Some examples of these are Bitly or tinyURL. There are more like that, and you're going to get these slides afterwards, so you could research those if you wanted to, if that's something you decide you're going to do. Another one is the link in bio tool. So this is the tool that we use to categorize and make available really popular links. And this works really well. So some of the links on our link tree have thousands of clicks on them because that's the place where people are finding that information. Think about the number of times you've gone to somebody's profile and clicked on the link in their profile in order to find the thing that they're talking about. Our students are doing that too, and our parents are doing that too. And so making the same tools available to them is part of our strategy. We do pay for our social media management tool. You don't have to, but we do. We pay for Hootsuite, and that allows us to schedule our content. That is super critical for us because, for example, if you saw the lead up to this summit, there wasn't quite 100, but there were like 75 posts about this summit and the different speakers that were going to be here and the different events. And rather than having to do each of those individually every day, I just sat down and did them for a couple of hours early on so that they were all scheduled out and they just appeared when I had scheduled them. Some examples of those are, like I said, Hootsuite's what we use in-house, but Later is also one, Brandwatch, Meltwater. These are all examples of social media management tools. Graphic design, you all have probably become familiar with Canva. Canva is one of the biggest winners in tech in the last few years, in my opinion. It is plug and play graphic design. And so if you can make a PowerPoint slide, you can make graphics on Canva. That's how easy it is. All you have to do is go in and sign up for a free account. And there's tons of free content you can use on there to make graphics for your channel. We do recommend that you come up with some sort of consistent design theme, right? You want to use the same colors or the same images or things like that, because that's part of how you build a brand. But just starting with getting graphics, that's a great place to start, right? Visme and Piktochart also do graphics. Those are great tools for you. And video editing is what we use for our Instagram videos and our TikTok videos. So those videos are typically shot right here at my desk. I've got my background on right now, but I'm sitting in the same place where I shoot most of those videos. And then I use a tool called CapCut in order to edit those videos. The same thing can be done with a program called Lightworks or a program called Adobe Premiere. That's also how we add closed captioning to our videos so that they're more accessible. I'm going to pass it back to Michael for this slide.
Thanks, Sarah Beth. And I saw that Jason's in the room. Jason Marty, I need to give a quick shout out to, who's our professional graphic designer. So when we aren't able to do things on Canva or just need something and to be done, Jason has been instrumental in helping us to grow this space, along with just members of our team as a whole. So I just wanted to give you a shout out, Jason, because you very much deserve it. So at this point, we're about halfway through our presentation, and you might be wondering, well, Sarah Beth, Michael, this is all cute, but what if I don't have capacity? What if I don't have the resources? What do I do? And so this is why we developed this slide, to go ahead and talk to you all about how much time, energy, and resources do you have? Because we understand that so many of you are limited on resources, and we have been too. And so when it comes to capacity, it's important that we also get realistic, right? And so we're going to go ahead and dive deep into what it looks like at varying levels. So let's say you're at low capacity, and let's consider an 80-20 strategy. So if you're like, hey, I don't have much time to be able to do this, I would love to, but I just don't have enough time, not enough hours, not enough resources. What you can do is consider 80% of your content actually being reposted. So, or the other way around, I should mention. So let's say you come across our account and you're like, well, we want to share something out, but we're not able to go ahead and create things organically at this time. You can share out our content, you can share out other resources. Federal Student Aid, for example, has a lot of different graphics and videos. So you can literally be reposting things on stories, or you can go ahead and even download some of the graphics that exist on toolkits and share those. Because we do understand that sometimes folks just don't have that capacity and don't have the infrastructure to be able to do that right away. Now, let's say you have medium capacity, maybe students in your area, maybe they're student workers or interns, or honestly, just folks that are wanting to contribute to a good cause that can make content for you as part of their assigned duties. And that's something that we really have also been thinking about even ourselves. If we were ever to have an intern or just have different folks being able to develop content for us, what that looks like. And at first, years ago, it really was just one person managing multiple accounts. And we realized, okay, as we continue to grow, we need to continue to build the infrastructure. And now we have an actual content development team. Shout out to Como and to Jared, to Sarah Beth. And we meet often to go ahead and discuss what we want our content to look like. But again, we know that sometimes folks are not going to have enough time or the resources to be able to do that, which is why we're having this discussion. Now, let's say you're in this arena where you determine that you actually have high capacity. Maybe you actually have the monetary resources to be able to hire on a consultant or a public affairs office. We've been fortunate to get philanthropic funding in the past where we've been able to actually hire on different firms or consultants to be able to help us out in expanding this area, whether that be through paid advertisement or providing us with advice. And again, we get it. Sometimes folks are not going to have access to this, but we also highly encourage you all that if you have any connections or if you know of any sort of philanthropic funders out there that might be willing to fund your community-based organization or school, the funding is actually out there. And that's something we've been learning. And honestly, something that we've relied on heavily is our philanthropic funding to be able to go ahead and even really think about what we can do outside of the box when it comes to our social media. But we want to make sure that we, again, ground ourselves in this. We know that folks are at varying levels, but be realistic about your capacity and ask yourself that question and talk to your management, talk to your peers about what's actually attainable. And you never know. There may be someone in your team that's actually been really, really wanting to do this. And they may just be like, you know what, put me in, coach. I will do it. I'm going to create the content. But think about those resources. That's the big thing that we want to hone in on here. And
That's how I got this job. I just said, put me in,
true.
coach.
Very true. And I know we have some raised hands, so we will have some time to go ahead and take some questions in just a bit. We're a little over halfway done, so we'll make sure that there's enough time for that too. So thank you, Sarah Beth. So now we want to make this a little bit more interactive. I want to give you some examples on how can you present your content in different ways. So by now, a lot of you have actually seen Sarah Beth. Thanks, Sarah Beth. And she does a lot of direct to camera. And so we want to show you an example of what that looks like and then dive a little bit deeper into what that can look like for you.
Mistake I see people make when they complete their FAFSA is over-reporting assets. So let's talk about it. I work for the California Student Aid Commission. FAFSA works on skip logic, which means you won't get asked every question that's on the application. You'll only be asked the questions that are relevant to you. That means not everyone will get the asset screen, but if you do, this is what it looks like, and here's how you fill it out. Start with child support. You're going to report the amount of money you received in the previous calendar year. So if you complete the FAFSA in December of 2024, you'll report child support received in 2023. But if you complete the FAFSA in January of 2025, you'll report child support received in 2024. Next is cash on hand. You have to report the balance of your checking and savings accounts as of the day you complete the FAFSA. You should also report any cash that you've withdrawn that you're keeping in the house. The net worth of your investments, including real estate, does not include the home you own and live in. If you own a second property for any reason, you do have to report that here. You should also report CDs, stocks, bonds, other investments you have here. But you don't have to report your 401k or your Roth IRA. Net worth of businesses and investment funds means any business or investment fund. You have to report it even if it's a small business. To report the net worth, you take the value of the business or farm and subtract any debts against the business or farm. Make sure you send this video to somebody else who needs to know how to report their assets on FAFSA.
Thanks, Sarah Beth. A pro, right? But something I want to also mention here is these platforms, when you get more comfortable, you can splice different videos together. So I know sometimes folks are like, I'm not going to be able to remember my whole script in just one take. You don't have to. A lot of the time, you can create something that's 10 seconds, 5 seconds, piece it all together. You notice that Sarah Beth also used a green screen in that example. So you're able to add images or even videos behind you to go ahead and make it more engaging. But again, you don't have to be a one-take wonder. We understand that a lot of people are not going to be in that space, and that's okay. But it is an opportunity to just create some engaging content that is direct to camera. And sometimes you're not even going to need a green screen. You could do something from your car. You could be making coffee and talking about financial aid or something that you offer. The point is to make something that's engaging that people are like, that's a normal person. That's someone I can relate to. And with the next one, trending sounds, that has done wonders for us. So let's show the folks this.
Do you know them? No. But in DeClerv, we all fam. What? In DeClerv, we all fam. In the club, we are all family. Do you know them? No. But in DeClerv, we all fam.
I'm also wondering,
what?
just out of curiosity, how many of you have heard that trending sound in the last few weeks? Bonus if you know where it's from, but I've seen the emojis coming through. A lot of you have heard it. See, it's a trending sound for a reason. We use that a lot, and it works really well with students because once a trending sound hits TikTok, it just becomes a huge deal. And of course, we're wanting to make sure that we stay trending as well. And so, yes, Broad City. So opportunity for us to just engage in a creative way, and oftentimes a really funny way, is through trending sounds. And then green screen is our next example here.
Hang on, sorry, I am lost underneath the
difficulties this year, and let me show you the step-by-step on how to submit an appeal. I'm Professor Jude, your favorite college expert, and here's what we're going to learn today. Click the link in our bio to go to our link tree and select Cal Grant Appeals. Then download this Cal Grant Appeals form, fill out all the required information, and provide a detailed explanation on the circumstances surrounding your FAFSA or CADA submission. Check on-time application reconsideration and the FAFSA-CADA technical issues, and include any relevant supporting documentation. And then email the signed and completed form to studentsupport@csac.ca.gov. Go and submit your Cal Grant appeal now for the 24-25 academic year.
Thanks, Sarah Beth. So great way to go ahead and use green screen, right? Because there's actual forms. And sometimes we're talking about all these forms over the phone or through a presentation. People are like, I don't know what that means. Where do I go? What does it look like? That's a really great way to go ahead and show from step A all the way through Z of like, you start here, click the link in our bio, go to this website. Here's what the form looks like. Here's where you go to submit. All in what? I think that was about 15 seconds, Sarah Beth. It was pretty short, 15 to 30 seconds. There are so many ways, again, that we can engage and make this digestible, because oftentimes when folks start to hear all this jargon and these titles of forms, they get really overwhelmed. And so our piece is really making it digestible and relatable so that they feel like, okay, I can do that too. Our next example is a very timely one. It's actually a statement that was just released by our executive director, she referred to earlier in the presentation, that's gotten a lot of engagement already. Obviously, very timely in terms of things that are happening right now. But an example that we want to go ahead and show you because it's important that we are also timely when it comes to the things that we are discussing that affect our students. And we want to be transparent. And we also want to show that we're ahead of the game and making sure that when things are happening, that we are also responding. And so one of the things that I just want to also mention here is the analytics. This was posted, I believe, Sarah Beth, yesterday in the morning, right? I think before 9 a.m. And we have over 109,000 views here. And so also, again, making sure that we're prepared. Oftentimes when we know that news is going to be coming, whether it's an election or something about the budget or whatever it may be, we're thinking ahead of the game. And I do want to give a shout out to, of course, the folks over in our policy and arena, media relations, Shelveen, who does a wonderful job in making sure that we're staying ahead of the news and making sure that we are able to respond. So that's an example. And one that you can think of that apply to your schools, your organizations, or really any important announcement that you're like, hey, we know this is coming. We're going to be able to go ahead and respond in this way. And then being able to have templates also prepared for that. So in that way, you don't also have to create things from scratch all the time. And that graphic, I believe, was made through Canva. And our last example is a B-roll and a day in the life. So I will let Sarah Beth play that one.
Works at the CSAC Outreach and Marketing Team under 60 seconds. Let's go. My name is Como. This is my colleague Israel, and today we're at Santa Clara University for UndocuCon, which is an annual event specifically for undocumented DACA mixed status family students. We are greeted with some very yummy snacks this morning. We also have Dr. Daisy Gonzalez in the house. She's our executive director. Today's theme was Don't Give Up. So Dr. Daisy shared her story and her passion for education, which is then followed by the keynote speaker, Dr. Francisco Jimenez. Israel then led the Cash for College webinar, where he spoke about his journey in financial aid and some financial aid resources specifically for these communities. We then did some tabling at the resource fair after, where we handed out flyers. We ran to our previous commissioner, which is really cool. And yeah, so thank you again for having us, and we can't wait for next year. Follow us for more information on financial aid. Bye.
Thanks, Sarah Beth. And yes, I do want to point to what Sarah Beth mentioned. So B-roll is when you're taking video without the audio, and then you overlay it with your voice, for example. And that could be a combination of photos or videos. I know a lot of us, especially when we go to conferences or events, we're accustomed to recording videos or taking pictures of the presentations or just activity going on. You can then collect all of that material and then make it into a very engaging type of video. And a lot of people, especially these days, love B-roll type of content, especially day in the life or taking someone along the journey, because people also experience FOMO. You know, we were all like, oh, I want to be there. Hey, okay, I didn't get a chance to be there, but at least I get to get this insider's perspective. And that's an opportunity, again, to just engage in a very creative way. So with that, Sarah Beth, I'm going to pass it to you for the next slide.
Yeah, so this slide is called How Will You Engage? And Anthony, I see your question. We've got Q&A in like 2 or 3 slides. I would love to answer your question when we get there. So how will you engage? And this is a question of stepping into the social media ecosystem, which is social, right? Social media is called that because it's a conversation. If you just post things and then walk away, nobody's ever going to see your content. And you're going to feel frustrated about that. And so you have to make some decisions about how you're going to engage with the people you're trying to find, right? How are you going to let them know your content is there? How are you going to engage with comments or direct messages? And how are you going to participate as a good citizen in the ecosystem, right? And so one of the first things that I like to keep in mind when I'm thinking about social media is that the conversation's already happening. It's like walking up to somebody at a party and they're having a conversation about something and you're like, oh yeah, this thing too, right? And so you have to remember that the conversation's already going on and you're adding to the conversation. Now that doesn't mean that you don't repeat yourself. I repeat myself constantly, and that's because there's always a new person stepping up to the conversation to ask another question that's been answered 5 minutes ago, right? And that's okay. It's okay to repeat your content, but you do want to remember that you're stepping into a conversation that's already going on. We have comment and DM policies internally about answering comments, about answering DMs. Currently, our policy is to answer questions that come through comments and DMs. And so when people send us direct messages, myself or Como or Jared answers those direct messages and sends them to the place that they need to go. Especially when it comes to financial aid, some people just want to DM you. They don't want to ask their question on the public feed of your comment threads. This is an example, though, of a comment that I did answer publicly. Somebody just asked a very basic question about financial aid, and I answered with a very basic answer. We keep some canned responses lying around over here so that we can respond to people much more quickly. It's also easier to respond to Instagram and TikTok comments using the web interface rather than the phone interface. And so if you log in on the website, like what you saw with the videos that Michael and I just shared, you log in on the website, you can type out your comment or copy and paste the information that you want to share, and that makes it a lot faster to get through those comments. We recommend you keep a list of frequently asked questions. What are your people asking you? If you're talking to a lot of students, maybe they're asking you a specific type of question, like when does FAFSA open? Right? If you're talking to parents, maybe they're asking you specific questions like, why do I have to provide information on my students' financial aid? They live on their own and I don't claim them on my taxes, right? Keep a list of FAQs. It's the same FAQs you're getting in your financial aid offices, but it'll help you when you run out of ideas for content, and you will run out of ideas for content, right? We go back to our FAQs all the time. We just did that yesterday in our content meeting. And then when you reshare content, there's a way to do that that is polite in the social media sphere, and that is to tag the person who created the content. And so just like you can tag someone on Facebook by hitting the @ sign and typing their name, you can tag someone on any social media platform by including their username in the post. And that's really polite to do. You don't want to just go sharing somebody's content and cutting their logo off of it, which I've absolutely seen done, and pretending that it's your own content, right? It's okay to share. There are entire accounts on the internet that are nothing but repost accounts that have millions of followers. You all have interacted with them every day of your lives. I've interacted with them every day, right? Those repost accounts are that's a way to do content. Like Michael was saying earlier, you can do 80% repost, and that's still a social media strategy. And then one other thing I wanted to mention here is about frequency, which is sometimes people who are new to social media strategy will put out 4 or 5 pieces of content on one day and then walk away for a week. And it's much more effective to post once a day than 5 times in an hour, because then your content is spaced out. If you've ever been scrolling on the internet and you've seen 3 posts from the same person in 5 minutes, right? And you've been like, that's okay, I've already heard from you. I want to hear from somebody else. That's the same thing that's at work here in the background when you are making the content as well. So this is the last slide before Q&A, and then we're going to do Q&A. So how does professionalism work on social media? This is a question that I get a lot because it's different, right? We're here at a presentation today for a summit, and so Michael's got a coat and a collar on, and I put on a nice sweater, and you've seen folks in, suits and things like that today. That is not what you don't have to do that for social media. In fact, there's a really high value placed on authenticity. Audiences are looking for real people in real environments, which is why I shoot right here at my desk to the door on the wall, right? And you can't see like my messy bookcase behind me, which is nice. But people want authenticity. It's also why you can shoot in a car, right? Relaxed presentation is a part of what is popular. There's no need to look or sound perfect. It's okay to stumble over your words. It's okay to not have a perfect take. The way that I think about this is informal and informative is a successful strategy. And so you want to talk to somebody like you would talk to a friend, a family member, a cousin. If you break down a little bit of that power dynamic, which is really what professionalism is. If you break down a little bit of that power dynamic, you'll be much more successful in reaching the population you're trying to reach. Oftentimes you'll see me in videos start the video with, I'm sorry, or you're not alone. You're not the only one having this experience. Those are really important touch points for being honest with your population, and audiences really value that honesty over having the right answer immediately. They'd rather you say, I don't know, and I'm going to find out, than have you give them no answer, ignore them, or have you give them an answer that's wrong. One of the things we've learned in the research is how to lead from the heart and acknowledge the concerns that people have. People are worried about financial aid. It was a mess last year. There are concerns about the new administration. People don't want to give up their tax information. Some people are in tough situations and aren't going to qualify for aid. It's okay to acknowledge those concerns and then offer the help that is available. And so we keep a set of resources for people who are in need of resources that we might not have. For example, I keep NASFA's map of financial aid agencies, state financial aid agencies, in our link tree, because so many people see our videos and are like, what about Rhode Island? What about Colorado? And I am not an expert on either of those states, but I can send them to the people who are, right? And then there are also some rules that still apply. For example, you probably shouldn't use curse words on your, professional videos. And, you can, you probably shouldn't do it in your pajamas because it's a video for work. I tell a story about this screenshot all the time because this was the most viral video that we had. It was seen by over 10 million people. That was not my plan when I shot it at 1 o'clock on a Friday afternoon. And I had just spilled salad dressing on my shirt, which is why you see me wrapped up in this scarf, because I was like, oh, quick, I need to wrap myself up so that I'm not covered in salad dressing while I make this video. And then I came back to work Monday morning and it had been the most successful video that we had ever produced. And so, but I didn't do my hair, I didn't do my makeup. You'll notice I rarely wear makeup. Anyway, you don't have to follow those professionalism standards in order to be successful on social media. So I'm gonna pass it back to Michael to help manage our Q&A.
Thanks, Sarah Beth. Yes, so we would love to hear from a few folks. We have about 19 minutes left with a few more slides. So we'll probably take about 2 or 3 questions right now, and then we'll jump back in and then we'll finish it off and then have a few more. So I do see that there are a couple of hands. I think Marcos had his hand up, or their hand up from the beginning, and then we can pass it to Sylvia. So Marcos, do you have a question? And if it was a mistake, no worries. Go ahead and let us know, because that's definitely happened to me before. But Marcos, do you still have a question? It may have been that, which is okay. So we'll also open it up to folks. If anyone does have a question, feel free to unmute if you can. If not, put it into the Q&A box, and we'd be happy to take questions.
Yeah, I'm going to take the 2 questions that have been asked in
Perfect.
text format while we wait for other folks. Feel free to raise your hand or to ask the question in the Q&A box. So Carla asks, when you say green screen, do you mean a physical green screen behind you or a background? And I don't mean a Zoom background. So in CapCut, which is the software that I shared with you earlier, we do not have a paid account on CapCut. So this is what the front face of CapCut. Oh, hang on. Let me take my video down, my virtual backgrounds down, and I'll show you. This is what the front of CapCut looks like. And when you drop down the menu, there's a camera button in there. That's the button I'm going to press. Here's the camera button. Look, there's my screen for all of you. And in the effects box down here, if you click effects, there's a green screen function. And so if I were to press that green screen function, it shows me this like European cityscape or whatever it is, right? And then I can change it. For example, earlier today, I was filming the parent walkthrough. And so now if I were to put my face on the front of this screen, now my face is right on top of the thing, and it's that easy to do a green screen.
And Sarah Beth, if I can just quickly add, if you don't have CapCut or you're not familiar with that, most of these social media platforms are going to have something like this. So I know TikTok has a green screen function, which is also something that you can do for free. I believe Instagram does that too. If you also just need a step-by-step, you could, of course, come back to this recording, or you could YouTube too. You could literally just type in green screen TikTok. And if you're wanting to create it there, you can. It's just a different form of engagement. But once you get the hang of it, it definitely becomes much more easier and accessible. But just wanted to go ahead and throw that in there too.
Yeah. Hopefully that answers your question, Carla. I'm going to take Anthony's next and Marcos is third because that's the order they came in. Anthony asked, how do you do B-roll? And so the way that I think of doing B-roll is to take a little video of my life. And so I take my phone and I take a little video of me making my coffee in the morning. It's only like 5 seconds and it's me stirring my coffee. And then I take a little video of me sitting down at my computer and looking at my email, and the phone's pointed at me, so nothing sensitive's on the screen, right? Take a little video of that. And then I take a little video of me drinking my water. And then I take a little video of me putting on my lotion. And then it's time for lunch, so I take a little video of me making a sandwich. And then all of those little short videos get put together. I would put them together in CapCut because that's the program that I use. But you put them together in a video editor, and then they show up next to each other and cut between each other. And at that point, all you have to do is record the voiceover. And again, I would do that in CapCut because you can do that very easily in CapCut. You just press a button and talk right into the phone, right? Or into your headphones if you're going to do your sound on headphones, right? So that's how I would do B-roll. And then you put the video out. That's how Como shot the video that we looked at. Okay, Marcos's question, and then we'll finish the last few slides and have some time for questions at the end. And then, Michael, if it's okay with you, I'll hang out here and I'm happy to answer more questions because I know you all are going back to the main room.
Yes.
But I'm happy to wait
fine.
here and answer questions for folks who still have them.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Marcos asks, do you ever go live or find value in ever going live? I absolutely do. We go live once a week on each Instagram and TikTok, and it's highly valuable, super valuable. Not only does it provide a place for you to find new followers, people who are just randomly scrolling and scroll into your live and are like, oh my God, I have questions about this. But it also provides an opportunity for sort of an office hours style setup where people can ask questions. And if I don't know the answer, I say, I don't know the answer. Here's a way you can get in touch with me. I'll look into that for you. I have no problem saying that. And we schedule those lives. I usually schedule them the week before, and I usually announce them ahead of time. Both Instagram and TikTok, and I don't know about Facebook, but both Instagram and TikTok have an ability to schedule a live, and then it appears in your bio as scheduled. And then people can find it even if they're not on one of your videos. So if somebody just came through our profile, they could find out that we were going live next week at a certain time, and the app will allow them to set up a reminder. And so they'll get a push notification that we're getting ready to go live. Or when we press the live button, they could also get a push notification depending on their notification settings. But just like the other videos, I do those lives right here. I don't, or in my car, right? I don't try and like set up a fancy background. I don't worry about, do I need to put on the nicest clothes? I can do them right here. Sometimes my cat shows up in them. So hopefully that answers that question for you, Marcos. And we'll take some more questions at the end, but I think I'm going to pass it back to Michael for a few more tips.
Thank you. Thank you. And so an example, if you're like, okay, I eventually aspire to get to that point, but maybe you're like, I am not at the point where I can piece together all these videos and pictures. That's okay. Here's an example of what I did as far as a green screen is concerned. So I actually already had an image that basically is a visual depiction of my educational journey from high school, which I am a proud LAUSD alum, all the way through grad school. And so I had a still image already pieced together, put that behind me on the green screen, and I took that as an opportunity to talk about my educational journey, how financial aid played a role in my educational journey as a first-generation college graduate, and just talk about it. And that's really all it was. And so it's how I would be talking to you right now, but there happens to be a picture that is a symbol, right? There's a visual depiction, and that's going to be more engaging than just a standard type of, right directly to the camera. It's just another way to show something beyond just the normal face to camera. So that's an example here. But with that, I do want to share a couple more tips. So if we transition to the next slide, thanks, Sarah Beth. So a couple of best practices here. First and foremost, get going. I know it can be a little bit scary, might even be a little bit overwhelming, but that's okay. We don't expect content to go viral right away or even viral at all. That may not be the goal, and that's okay. Because along with what Sarah Beth mentioned, when you go viral, it's a great thing in terms of reaching people, But there's also a lot of interesting things that come along with that too. So if you're like, you know what, I don't want that type of attention to that extreme, that's also okay. The whole point is we just want you to feel comfortable making content. Number 2 here is creating a list of posts to make and when you're able to make them. So planning ahead does actually really help. That took us a while to get to ourselves, actually. At first, we were kind of just like, okay, well, we're just going to post and see what happens when we first started out. Now we actually have a planned out schedule. We're talking about themes and topics, and it's pretty thought out, but it takes time to get there, and that's okay. Making use of free professional development online. So some of you may even have resources to attend conferences like this or to be able to go to different places to get trainings, but a lot of stuff exists for free. You can YouTube so much of this information. There's so many creators out there, folks that do video editing that will go ahead and speak on their expertise or ways that you can engage online. So easy way for you to engage if you don't maybe have the funds to go to these professional conferences and get trainings like that. Using tools to find out what time of day is most popular for your audience. So through Hootsuite, Sarah Beth and I and the team are able to identify when platforms are more active. And so it tells us by live data, your audience is actually more active at, let's say, 7 p.m. on Instagram. And we're able to schedule ahead. So let's say we're not working at 7 p.m., but we can schedule our posts to go live at the time that folks are more active. So just an opportunity there. Partnerships. We've been talking about this all day. Partnerships, collaborations, working across the folks that work in your office, your peers, but also beyond that. We've been fortunate to collaborate with so many different types of organizations, even sports teams that have even made PSAs for us for free, like the Golden State Warriors and the Sacramento Kings, who literally made videos for us that would cost tens of thousands of dollars, if not more, for free because we were able to collaborate and really connect on a good cause. Last but not least on this slide is developing a diversity of content. So as you can see on the screen, we do a lot of meme type videos. As you can see with the little pug, we have different announcements. You can see Victoria in that picture on the annual statewide financial aid workshops. We work with content creators. We have graphics. And again, it took us time to get here. So that is okay if you're like, well, I'm going to start with developing some sort of plan. It's going to take some time. And then a second slide of even more best practices. Being persistent. We've learned that consistency is key and that we need to be active on all these platforms. And so for some folks, you may find a time where you're like, you know what, I can't post every day, but I can find, let's say, 2 hours out of my week to batch record content. So you may do this in advance and then schedule out your post so that it looks like it's actually going out, let's say, every day or every few days, but it's actually something that you've already recorded in advance and you just scheduled out to go on particular days. So you don't have to be on every single day if you're not able to. Telling a story. I'm a big fan of storytelling. It's something I talk about with the team all the time. For those of you that have gone to our trainings, like Train the Trainer, something I always emphasize is how can we share with our audience our personal stories that allow for some form of connection, especially an emotional connection. It allows people to connect to vulnerability and to transparency and to authenticity. And that's a central theme through everything we're discussing here. Repeat yourself, especially with financial aid. You know, folks get really confused, even us at the staff level sometimes with some of the stuff that gets released. And so repeating yourself, it takes time for people to register that information. And don't assume that everyone saw your posts because that's just never going to be the case. You're always going to be reaching different type of people. And some folks may have seen the post, but maybe they don't remember what you said. Using captions on videos, that's for accessibility and inclusivity purposes, but also we've learned that a lot of folks actually watch videos on mute. I don't know if any of you are those folks, but I know sometimes I'm scrolling and I'm not necessarily having the audio on, but if you have captions, people are still actually staying on your videos. So it's another way for folks to engage, but also you're being inclusive at the same time. Using a link in bio tool like Sarah Beth went over, and then crediting the people when you use their content. So whether that's tagging them or going in on a collaboration with them, similar to the citation in a paper, just want to make sure that you're giving credit where it's due. So just sharing a couple of things there on the screen here, more examples that you can see with memes and different graphics. And then I believe this is for Sarah Beth to talk about the winning combo of video and graphics.
Yeah, a diversity of content is key, right? If you do the same content over and over again, it will be difficult for you to grow. And maybe growing is not your goal, but if you are trying to reach a wider audience, then my best advice to you is to use both video and graphics. They do different things. People see them differently. People share them differently. And if you have shared the content on our channel, you've probably seen both. And so these two graphics were done in Canva. This is what Canva can do. And as I said earlier, if you can make a PowerPoint slide deck, you can make a Canva. Oh, so I'll get to your question in just a second, Carla. We've got one more question period here. This is the last slide before our closing, and we're right on time, which is great news. And as I said earlier, I will stay to answer questions. Michael's got to go back to being MC of this whole thing, but I will stay to answer questions if other people have questions. So you're going to get a copy of these slides. I don't have time to show you each of these videos or each of these posts, but you can go through and click on them when you get the copy of the slides if you are interested in things you can do right now. So, for example, an informal but informative post is this post that I made while I was in my car, and I just set the phone up on the steering wheel and shot it just like that. I didn't have any fancy equipment or anything, but I will tell you that if you're concerned about your appearance, the car is the best place to shoot because it's natural lighting. And that will make you feel better about the way the video looks. And that's one of the reasons why creators do it, right? And so this video is just very basic information. I can't remember what the topic is, but it's informal, right? Just having a conversation in my car. Another trending sound option for you. Cuomo makes all the memes around here, or most of the memes around here. And so if you've ever appreciated a meme on our channel, shout out to Cuomo Sing. This is a group of dude bros going through their cycle of clothing and dancing in a circle together, and each different one is labeled as part of the cost of college attendance. And you can do that with lots of different trending sounds, the way that we saw earlier within the clip. Coffee chat. So this is actually a screenshot from a live that I did recently, but you could have a half-hour series that's a coffee chat where you brew a cup of coffee or a cup of tea or whatever it is, and you sit down and you go live for half an hour. I really want to caution you, if that's your approach to this, that you may not see a lot of people at first, and that's okay. Our lives average somewhere between 10 and 50 people at a time, and oftentimes it's a few hundred to a few thousand people that come through over the course of the live. Very few people sit down and watch a live from start to finish, but you can save the live to your page on Instagram, which means that it's content people can watch later as well. And so you get double dipping with a live event. This is a carousel that we made. A carousel is a post on Instagram that you can swipe through the slides on it. This is like the modern day version of a PowerPoint slide deck. So if you can make a carousel on Canva up to 20 slides and provide that as information. And this is this carousel is just basic information about applying for financial aid, one small tidbit on each slide. Part of what you want to be careful of when you make these slides is making the text too small, because if you make the text too small, people won't be able to read it on their phones. It'll look different on your screen than it looks on the phone. So I recommend you at least start with a 24-point font on those slides. Don't try to put everything as 12-point font. Think about what you would want to see as a consumer of content. You are probably going to scroll past something that's a black background with white text on it, and it's just text from top to bottom, right? And then there's a B-roll example from one of our content creators that we paid with philanthropic funds, and that's showing another, for folks who are asking about B-roll content, that's showing how you could make that content on a college campus, because some of you are working on college campuses. So I'm going to pass this to Michael for our final activity.
Thanks, Sarah Beth. So at this point, we want to just give you an opportunity to think about what are 3 to 5 takeaways. And if you have less, that's okay. But takeaways from this presentation, because our goal really was to make sure that you left feeling like, okay, I learned at least one thing that I can go ahead and take to my team, take for yourself. whatever that may be. So giving you an opportunity to do that. I know we're closing out on time, so I want to be respectful of folks that need to head back to the main room, but I know Sarah Beth is going to be open for some additional Q&A. And I just want to give my thank you because I'm going to head back to MC duties. But if I don't get a chance to talk to you all before the official end of the entire event, I just want to extend my gratitude to you all for being here. And for those of you that I will get a chance to see in the main room, I will go ahead and see you there. But Sarah Beth, I will leave it with you, and I will go ahead and see you all in the main room. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, folks. I'll answer Carla's question. That was the only question I've seen so far, which is what tool do you recommend to repost on Instagram? So when we repost, we typically repost to our stories, which is native in Instagram's app. And so you just use the little share button to post it to your stories. We haven't actually used a repost tool in a little while, but Carla, if you email me, I'll give you my email address. I'll look into what tools might exist and let you know. And I'll look up here to see if there are other questions in the Q&A, and there are. What types of professional conferences have we attended? So I attended the Social Media Summit, the SMS for government officials, because that's our industry, right? And I can let you know where that is. I know you all can see my screen. SMS social media. It's the Social Media Strategy Summit. This is the summit that I attended 2 years ago, and it was helpful for me in order to step into not just a social media role, but a government social media role. I've made social media for my personal life, my whole life, because I grew up on the internet in the 90s, but learning how to do it for a professional role and for a government role, this conference was particularly helpful for me. And then we also attend a lot of conferences to understand the content of financial aid, right? But I don't think you're asking about those conferences. Okay. For folks who are still here hanging out with me, if you've got more questions, feel free to raise your hand or drop them in the Q&A, and I can answer those questions while we're here. Otherwise, don't feel like you have to stick around. Thank you so much for being here today. Thanks for coming to our presentation. I didn't get to make a joke about dancing, and I am sad about that. But as you notice, none of my videos have dancing in them because I'm bad at it. So you also don't have to dance in your videos to make content. Really bad at it. Yeah. Like only dance at weddings, bad at it. Everybody have a good rest of your day. I see folks heading out. I'm going to go ahead and stop the Zoom now. Take care. Bye, everyone.